Sauber are a mess this season and absolutely no one is talking about it. Keep in mind, this is a team that in less than 2 years' time will become a massive OEM manufacturer team with their own power unit, massive investment from Audi and the VW group, and a huge pool of drivers to choose from who will all want to be part of the Audi project. Although Audi were initially looking to officially take over the team in 2026, at the beginning of this year, they accelerated their commitment to Formula 1 by buying 100% of Sauber early, giving them full control from here on out, even though the team will still remain being called Sauber until the new regulations. And yet, despite all of that, not only did the team look extremely incompetent at the start of the season, which isn't a word that I use lightly on my channel, but it also leaves me worried that unless things change and improve on the operational side within the next couple of years, I think from 2026 we could be looking at the next Alpine more than the next Mercedes. As things stand after 5 races, although the bottom 3 teams are all pointless, which in comparison to last year all of the teams had scored points by now in 23, Sauber currently sits last in the Constructors' Championship, behind Williams, who are still struggling with Logan Sargent and didn't even have a spare chassis to start the season, and they're also behind the French catastrophe that has been Alpine. But what continues to blow my mind is that over the past couple of years, Sauber, under whatever name they've had, always seem to be forgotten about and never get anywhere near the same level of criticism as teams like Williams, Alpine, or Haas. As I explained in a recent video on Yuki Tsunoda, in 2024, the gap between the top 5 teams and the bottom 5 teams has actually got bigger. And what this means is that theoretically, if all 10 drivers from Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, Aston Martin and Mercedes have no reliability issues, no penalties, and just have a clean weekend, on pure performance, there is literally no points available for any of the drivers in the midfield. Scoring just 1 point in 2024 is like getting a win for the drivers in the midfield. But it also means that there's an extra emphasis and extra pressure on the teams and drivers to nail the entire weekend, from qualifying, strategy, pace, pit stops, and race execution. And now, whilst Sauber have been lacking in a lot of areas this season, one area that they definitely can fix very quickly is by getting the sponsor of today's video, Surfshark VPN. Surfshark is super handy when it comes to getting around watching content that is geo-blocked in your country, like you might have experienced on YouTube or Twitter, or just stuff that's only available to watch in other countries at the time. So for example, recently I wanted to rewatch the amazing Senna documentary, however unfortunately it wasn't available on Netflix in the UK. No problem however, because with the help of this site I found out that it was available in Denmark. And from there, it was just a couple of clicks using Surfshark's Google extension to transport me and my virtual location to the home of Kevin Magnussen, and then I just had to refresh Netflix, and that's it. The full movie in full HD, or any movie or TV show that you can think of, ready to go from anywhere in the world. All you need is one Surfshark account, as it can be used on an unlimited number of devices. And so by using my promo code ALDAS, which can be found via the link in the description, or by scanning my unique QR code on the screen, you can get a huge discount on Surfshark and get an extra 3 months for free as well. And on top of that, Surfshark also has a 30-day money-back guarantee if you decide to change your mind. It's a great deal, so make sure to check it out, and thank you again to Surfshark. And now, what makes the season so frustrating for Sauber so far is that, as Bottas himself admitted, relatively speaking, Sauber actually have a pretty decent car that is able to compete with the likes of RB and Haas. And yet despite that, it's the team itself which has let the drivers down in almost every single race. And now, if you followed Alfa Romeo closely since 22, and to be honest it seems like very few people actually have, then you will know that their reliability record has been terrible for a very long time, and that still hasn't changed in 24. In China, Bottas retired with an engine issue, in Japan, Zhou retired with an early gearbox issue, and in Australia, Zhou had yet another gearbox issue leaving the pits, which put his car into anti-stall and cost him time. However, undoubtedly the team's biggest problem so far has been their pit stops. Unlike most teams where their pit stops are bad because the personnel just aren't as well choreographed or as well trained as teams like Red Bull, Sauber is unique in the sense that the reason that their pit stops have been so bad is actually because they've had a fundamental hardware issue. The team's biggest problem has been cross-threaded wheel nuts during pit stops, and the root of the problem stems from their new for 2024 lightweight material wheel nuts. Now, ironically, the team developed these wheel nuts in a bid to improve their pit stop times and save weight. But unfortunately, due to the building temperatures during race conditions, which causes the brake hub, wheel, and therefore wheel nut to get hotter, this has had a structurally compromising effect as the wheel nut has been more likely to eat into the thread as the temperature of the wheel hub increases. The reason that the team weren't able to spot the problem beforehand is because firstly, they made a mistake during the design phase, getting too close to the limit, and they also didn't have this problem occur to the same extent during preseason testing or practice until the first race of the season in Bahrain. What's even worse is that not only were the team not able to revert back to last year's parts because due to how complex the suspension and wheel assembly is, the old parts are now not compatible with the brand new front suspension that Sauber have in 24, but Valtteri also said that with how long and complicated the design and manufacturing process is for new parts, the team won't get a permanent solution until maybe Miami, and in the meantime, this issue has taken time away from developing the car itself. In terms of what this has meant for the drivers to start the season, in Bahrain, Valtteri had a 52-second pit stop, in Jeddah, Zhou had a 35-second pit stop, in Australia, Valtteri had a 28-second pit stop, whilst Zhou in the same race had his gearbox anti-stall issue, which also lost him time in the pits. And then even though they haven't had the same cross-threaded wheel nut problem since, because of how cautious the team are having to be, Valtteri in Japan was jumped in the pits by both Yuki and Hulk, despite the fact that he was leading the fight for the points. And then in China, according to DHL, whilst Red Bull had an average pit stop time of 2.03 seconds, Sauber had an average pit stop time of 3.62 seconds and were by far the slowest team on the grid. And now, these issues are embarrassing. There is no other word to describe it. But what makes them even worse in my mind is that this is a team that is looking to expand. It's looking to be the next big thing. It thinks that in a few years' time it's going to be this Red Bull beating title contender, and it's also actively looking for drivers that they feel will be better than what they already have. And yet the drivers that are currently there are basically being sabotaged by their own team and aren't even able to make a case for why they should be kept on due to the incompetence of their own team. Zhou and Bottas are not the best drivers on the grid, so let's just get that straight. But I really feel sorry for them because how can you save your seat when you're literally not able to compete and are being set up to fail by your own team? Even after 5 races, I think that there has been some genuine moments of quality from both drivers. Zhou, for example, executed a fantastic race in Bahrain to finish as best of the rest in P11 and was massively unlucky that that was one of those races where nothing happened to any of the drivers in the top 5 teams as they didn't have any issues or any penalties. On any other weekend, he could have scored points for Sauber with that finish, but unfortunately, I guarantee that 99.9% of people won't remember that performance because he didn't score any points. He also finished 9th in the Chinese sprint, probably due to the fact that you don't have to pit during a sprint race, but again, points are only handed out to the top 8 in the sprint. As for Valtteri, Japan and China were by far his best chances to score points. But in Japan, as I mentioned earlier, even though he was ahead of Yuki who went on to score points, he was let down by his team in the pit stops. And then in China, even though it's difficult to know how the race would have panned out because he was the one that brought out the safety car that ultimately turned the race on its head, before his engine blew up, he was less than 2 seconds away from Nico Hülkenberg, who went on to score points. The point being that with the drivers that they have and also the car that they have as well, even though it's nowhere near as good as the likes of Aston Martin or Mercedes, they should have scored some points by now, and they shouldn't be last in the championship. Over the past couple of years, whilst Max's consistency and brilliance has been groundbreaking to watch, part of the reason he has been able to be this consistent is because Red Bull on an operational level have set new standards in pit stops and reliability that have put Max in the most comfortable position possible to succeed. When you compare that to Sauber, whilst now they can get away with it because they're just little old independent Sauber who no one really talks about, when this team does become Audi, with all of that big manufacturer money and all of those big manufacturer expectations, they can't afford to keep being this incompetent. When it comes to the drivers, the brutal reality that makes me feel sorry for them is that at the end of the season, I can almost guarantee that at least one of them, if not both of them, will be out of the team. Given that last year there was literally no movement in the driver market, and now this year everyone's contracts basically are coming to an end, Audi will see 25 as the perfect bed-in period before the team officially becomes Audi in 26. And so the drivers that will race for Sauber next year will probably be the same drivers that will start the Audi era of Formula 1. Even though I think continuity actually means a lot less than people think, with my argument always being McLaren in 2019, who with 2 new drivers and one of them being a rookie, did an amazing job as a combination. Teams love the idea that continuity somehow gives them stability and more performance. Therefore, I think Audi will want to keep at least one of their current drivers as a benchmark, and I think that Valtteri Bottas is by far the most likely option. That means that Zhou Guanyu, who has been a perfectly solid F1 driver and much better than say someone like a Sargent for example, is potentially starting his last season in Formula 1 unless he can beat Valtteri or get into a team like Williams for example. And I think that's why perhaps I liked that he got to have his special moment at his home Grand Prix in front of his home fans, because there is a very good chance that, unfortunately, it could be his first and last Chinese Grand Prix. As for the other drivers on Audi's list, well, we definitely know who's at the top of it, that's for sure. Audi have been chasing Carlos Sainz for years, and we now know thanks to Helmut Marko that Audi has formally offered Sainz a lucrative 3-year contract that Helmut Marko said Red Bull just can't match. Now, I've already talked about Sainz's future in depth on my channel, and I'll reiterate my thoughts by saying that for where Sainz is in his career, Audi are just not ready for him. You can't go within a year from winning in a Ferrari to not scoring points in a team that can't even do a sub 30-second pit stop if you're Sainz. For him, I think the priority has to be Mercedes, Red Bull, Aston Martin, and only then Audi as a backup. The other drivers who have also been linked are Nico Hülkenberg, who according to reports Audi really like given his German connection, race winner Esteban Ocon, who looks to be coming to an end at his time with Alpine, and then also Alex Albon, who is definitely a driver looking to move his way up the grid into a future race-winning contender. But this team still has a lot of work to do. Officially, they don't even have a team principal yet, with Alessandro Aluni-Bravi acting as the team representative and Andrea Seidel as the CEO. Both of whom I actually think need to take a lot of responsibility for the mess that the team finds itself in right now. But they are one of many strange things about this team in transition who are acting as if they are a big team already with the drivers that they're being linked to, but in reality sits last in the Constructors' Championship, which based off their incompetence so far, is exactly where they deserve to be. Well, there you have it. Once again, a massive thank you to Surfshark VPN. Don't forget to scan the QR code on screen or check out my link at the very top of the description to get a massive saving on Surfshark VPN. And if you did enjoy this video and want to support the channel, then don't forget to subscribe. That would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.